Welcome to Logan Square Auditorium, and thank you for coming out to tonight's town hall discussion about the fight to elect the school board here in the city of Chicago. On the materials that you all have gotten tonight, you have seen the word, the acronym, I should say, CODE, Communities Organized for Democracy in Education. That is the coalition that is responsible for this evening's event and that is fighting for the change in Chicago School Board to change it to an elected setup. Now, what CODE is doing is twofold. On the one hand, CODE is working on draft legislation to get this change. But the law is actually a state law that governs our city's school board, which is interesting in and of itself. So the group is working to lobby state representatives and state senators to support this issue and is working on drawing up some legislation that's going to provide a really good framework for electing the school board. But we're also working on this referendum that is going to be on the ballot across the city in the upcoming election. This referendum, in order to get it on the ballot, we had to collect signatures precinct by precinct, door by door, voter by voter. It was an arduous process, but a very powerful one, a very impactful one. I'm proud to say the organization collected 10,000 signatures around the city, and we are on the ballot in 327 precincts citywide.
One of the things I think Will just pointed out was how do you actually get to a Chicago Board of Education meeting? And it requires that you, if you really want to be heard, you have to be downtown by 6 o'clock to stand in line. Downtown, where there's parking, if there is parking, it's extraordinarily expensive. Especially if you're a teacher or a paraprofessional or a clinician, you have to take a day off of work without pay or a personal business day. Because obviously you can't take a sick day and go to the board and complain. But the problem with that is, why are meetings even held downtown on Wednesday mornings? Who is that convenient for? It is convenient for the members of the school board. It is certainly not convenient for the people who live in the community or certainly people who work in the schools. So part of the problem is we have a very unresponsive board to the needs of the community. And the question is, how do you make them accountable? So 4 years ago, when I was a classroom teacher and I was looking at the school closing issue, even though it wasn't going to affect me, I knew we had to take a stand. We had to talk to people and we had to be heard. And one of the things we said is, we asked the school board, do you all actually read the transcripts from the hearings where they have public comment and hearings? And what we heard was, no, they really didn't read the transcripts. They were advised by the CEO. So they made decisions without reading the transcripts, without ever going to set foot into the schools that they were going to close or turn around or whatever this week's terminology is for it. That's problematic, because when you do not have experience with the real process, then you're making decisions in an ivory tower, and an air-conditioned ivory tower. And part of the problem is to go downtown and realize that after you've stood in line for at least 2 hours, and sometimes longer, depending upon how exciting the topic is, you get exactly 2 minutes to state your case. And to people who are often texting or looking around or never giving you eye contact, so not only are they distant, they're almost disrespectful. It's as if you do not matter. So one of the problems that we see is that without an elected representative school board, then we feel strongly that people are not taking real ownership of the problems. You're making decisions based on experts, and those experts infinitely never worked a day in Chicago Public Schools. They don't send their children to Chicago Public Schools. There are all these kinds of things that happen that absolutely make no sense. And we feel that an elected representative school board is a step in the direction not only to accountability, but ultimately to a better form of democracy.
Over 90% of the school boards in the U.S. are elected. They're not appointed. So Chicago is the outlier rather than the common denominator. And Chicago was really the forerunner of having mayor-appointed boards around the country. So when we looked at the evidence, one of the things that we did was we studied elected big city school boards around the country and how they work. And I'm not saying these are the greatest school boards in the world either, because we really are proposing a different model of an elected school board here in Chicago. But those boards, most of them, they meet at night, they meet in the community, they have task forces. In Milwaukee, the board cannot take an issue to the board until they've had a whole series of community meetings and a community task force, so that issues come up through the community. So the things that we experience in Chicago, all these undemocratic practices in Chicago, really dictatorial practices in Chicago, do not exist, for better or worse, where there are elected school boards. We need different policies, we need different practices, we need a whole democratic process to involve people in changing our schools. But we cannot get off square one with this appointed board. It doesn't matter what you do, they won't change it.
On Tuesday, November 6th, in 327 precincts in Chicago, there was a measure on the ballot that asked, should Chicago have an elected school board? Overwhelmingly, the citizens of Chicago who voted on that referendum, a non-binding referendum, overwhelmingly the citizens of Chicago said, yes, we want an elected school board. 87% of the people who voted on the referendum voted yes. Now, this is very significant in many ways. One important way is this included voters from high-income Lincoln Park to Altgeld Gardens. Broad cross-section of voters from all over the city. It was a multiracial grouping of people, African Americans, Latinos, whites, Asians, from the north side down to the far south side, from the west side, as I said, from Lincoln Park to Altgeld Gardens, from Beverly to Rogers Park. This past summer, in the summer of 2012, members of CODE and Parents for Teachers, my organization, we are a member group in CODE. People from CODE, Communities Organized for Democracy and Education, went all around the city. People from Enlace in Little Village, people from the 19th Ward Parents in Beverly, we up on the north side, along with Raise Your Hand, Teachers for Social Justice, COCO in Bronzeville, Will Guzzardi and his folks in Logan Square. We joined together and we went out this summer and we gathered signatures to get a non-binding elected school board referendum on the ballot. And we achieved that purpose in 327 precincts. So that was the first step. And the next step is what we just finished, where we went to polls on the day of the elections on November 6th. We flyered in communities. We had a robocall that we set up. And the second part of the campaign was just completed, where 87% of the Chicagoans who voted on the elected school board voted yes, we should have an elected school board.